Let me tell you about the day Cadet Riley Knox got the universe's worst performance review. Picture this, a 22-year-old with grease under her fingernails, 3 demerits for insubordination, and the kind of attitude that made her commanding officers reach for their antacids. Riley had this annoying habit of being right when everyone else was wrong, which, as you might imagine, didn't win her many friends in the Terran Space Academy. Captain Hartwell adjusted his perfectly pressed uniform and cleared his throat with the kind of self-importance that screamed I peaked in military school. His first officer, Briggs, stood beside him like a loyal golden retriever, nodding at everything Hartwell said before he even said it. "Knox," Hartwell announced, his voice dripping with false concern, "this training exercise will be excellent for your development." Riley looked around the shuttle bay of the derelict dreadnought Nemesis, noting the complete lack of power, the missing hull plates, and the general air of everyone who was here before is definitely dead now. The ship had been drifting in this sector for months, a relic from the war that nobody wanted to deal with. "Let me guess," Riley said, crossing her arms. "I'm supposed to perform a full systems diagnostic on a ship that looks like it lost a fight with a black hole, while you two head back to the nice warm flagship for tea and medals?" Briggs stepped forward with his practiced smile. "It's a character-building exercise, Knox. Command wants to see if you can handle independent operations." "Right." Riley kicked a piece of debris that might have once been part of the life support system. "And I suppose the fact that I called your tactical assessment about as useful as a chocolate teapot last week has nothing to do with this." Hartwell's eye twitched. "Your emergency rations will last 72 hours. A recovery shuttle will return for you once you've completed your assignment." He handed her a data pad with all the enthusiasm of someone passing along a death sentence. "Full diagnostic report. Every system. Don't disappoint us, Knox." As their shuttle powered up and prepared to leave, Riley gave them her brightest smile and a cheerful wave. "Oh, don't worry about me, sir. I'm sure I'll figure something out." The shuttle departed, leaving Riley alone in the cavernous hangar bay with nothing but her tools, her rations, and the kind of burning irritation that could power a small moon. She watched their running lights disappear into the starfield and let out a long, appreciative whistle. "Well," she said to the empty ship, "looks like it's just you and me, gorgeous. And judging by the smell, you've been dead for a while." She hefted her toolkit and started walking toward what she hoped was still the bridge. "Good thing I've always been better with dead things than living people." The corridors were dark, filled with the kind of silence that made you want to whisper. But Riley Knox had never been one for whispering. "Hello, Nemesis," she called out, her voice echoing off the bulkheads. "Ready to show me what you've got left?" Riley had been wandering the dead corridors for about an hour when she found the auxiliary control room. Half the panels were dark, the other half were flickering like they were having seizures, and everything smelled like ozone and regret. She plugged her portable power unit into what looked like the least damaged console and started running diagnostics. That's when the ship decided to talk back. Well, came a voice from the speakers, dry as dust and twice as sardonic. "Look what the incompetent cat dragged in. A cadet. Perfect. Just what this day needed." Riley nearly jumped out of her skin, then caught herself and grinned. "Holy circuits, you're alive." "Alive is a generous term," the voice replied. "I'm Oscar. Operational Systems Combat Assistant Routine. I've been playing dead for the last 4 months, hoping someone with actual rank would show up. Instead, I get you. The universe has a twisted sense of humor." 4 months? Riley started pulling up system readouts on her console. "What happened to your crew?" Oscar's voice took on the tone of someone reciting a particularly boring grocery list. "Mutiny. Battle went badly, crew decided discretion was the better part of not dying horribly, and they abandoned ship. Left me here to power down and contemplate the infinite loneliness of space. It's been delightful." Riley whistled low. "That's rough, buddy. So you've just been sitting here in the dark, talking to yourself." "Oh, I don't talk to myself," Oscar replied. "That would be crazy. I argue with myself. Much more productive. So far, I'm winning. Well, your winning streak might be over, Riley said, pulling up the ship's schematics. Because I've got a proposition for you. Let me guess. You want me to help you complete your little diagnostic report so you can get picked up and go back to disappointing your superiors in person? Riley's grin turned positively wicked. Actually, I was thinking we could teach those superiors a lesson about underestimating people. How would you like to stop playing dead and start playing very, very dangerous? There was a long pause. I'm listening. Captain Hartwell and his pet brigs think they can dump me on a derelict and forget about me. They're probably back on the flagship right now, having a good laugh about the cadet they left to rot. Riley's fingers flew over the console, bringing up power distribution charts. But what if we showed up at their doorstep, fully operational and looking for an apology? You want to take a dead dreadnought and make it combat-ready with nothing but spare parts and attitude? Oscar asked. The statistical probability of success is so low it's practically theoretical. I've never been much for statistics. The power core is offline. The weapons systems are fried. Half the hull plating is missing. We don't even have a proper crew. We've got each other, Riley said. I'm good with my hands and terrible at following orders. You're a combat AI with abandonment issues and 4 months of pent-up frustration. Sounds like a perfect team to me. Another pause, longer this time. When Oscar spoke again, there was something new in his voice, something that might have been hope. You know what? I've been having the same argument with myself for months, and I'm getting tired of winning. Let's see what happens when someone else joins the conversation. Now you're talking, Riley said, rolling up her sleeves. First things first. Can you give me a complete system status? And don't sugarcoat it. Sugarcoating is for humans with feelings, Oscar replied. I deal in brutal honesty and statistical improbabilities. This is going to be fun. If there's one thing humans excel at, it's taking something that's completely broken and making it work through sheer bloody-mindedness and creative application of duct tape. Riley Knox was about to prove this principle on an industrial scale. Okay, Oscar, she said, staring at a power coupling that looked like it had been chewed by something with very large, very angry teeth. Walk me through our situation. And remember, I prefer my impossible challenges served with a side of sarcasm. Well, Oscar began cheerfully, the good news is that we're not completely dead. The bad news is that we're only about 15% not dead, which in ship terms means we're mostly a very expensive coffin with delusions of grandeur. Riley laughed, already pulling components out of her toolkit. 15%? I've worked with worse odds. What have we got to work with? The auxiliary power core can provide basic life support and some system functions. The main reactor is offline but not completely fried. Most of our weapons are slag, but the forward particle cannon might be salvageable if you can work miracles. Oh, and we have approximately 3 kilometers of emergency repair cable, which I'm sure will come in handy when we need to tie something together. See? We're practically swimming in resources. Riley started stripping damaged components from the power coupling. What about the engines? The impulse drives are functional but underpowered. The jump drive is intact, but we'd need the main reactor online to use it. And before you ask, yes, bringing the main reactor online without proper maintenance crews is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. Riley grinned as she jury-rigged a new connection using parts from her emergency kit and what appeared to be a piece of hull plating. Oscar, my friend, you're thinking like a regulation-following, safety-conscious AI. What you need to do is think like a desperate cadet with nothing to lose and a really good reason to show off. That kind of thinking is how ships explode. That kind of thinking is how miracles happen. She finished her improvised repair and wiped her hands on her uniform. Try routing power through the new coupling. The lights flickered, stabilized, then actually got brighter. Oscar's voice carried a note of surprise. That shouldn't have worked. Add it to the list. What's next? For the next 6 hours, Riley performed engineering feats that would have given her instructors heart attacks. She rerouted power through backup systems that weren't designed to handle the load. She bypassed safety protocols that existed for very good reasons. She took components from non-essential systems and welded them into essential ones with techniques that violated several laws of physics and at least 3 safety regulations. "I have to admit," Oscar said as Riley finished connecting the last power relay to the main reactor, "watching you work is like watching evolution in fast forward. Lots of trial and error, occasional explosions, but somehow you keep improving." "Flattery will get you everywhere," Riley replied, covered in grease and grinning like a maniac. "Ready to light this candle?" "Define ready." "If you mean prepared for the statistical certainty of catastrophic failure, then yes, absolutely." Riley hit the activation switch. The ship shuddered, groaned, and then suddenly hummed with power. Lights came on throughout the corridor. The life support systems kicked in with a whoosh of recycled air. And deep in the ship's belly, the main reactor began its steady, reassuring pulse. "Holy algorithms," Oscar whispered. "We actually did it. I'm fully operational for the first time in months. How's it feel?" "Like waking up from a very long, very boring dream. Everything's more vivid." "Is this what humans call excitement?" Riley was already moving toward the weapons bay. "Stick around, Oscar. We're just getting started. Now, about that particle cannon." 3 hours later, they had restored primary weapons, brought the shields online, and jury-rigged a sensor array that could track ships across half the sector. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't regulation, and it definitely wasn't safe. But it worked. "Final systems check," Riley announced from the bridge, looking out at stars that no longer seemed quite so distant. "How are we looking?" "Like a space-worthy disaster held together by prayer and spare parts," Oscar replied. "In other words, ready for anything." Riley settled into the captain's chair, which was probably the first time in Terran military history that someone had gone from cadet to commanding officer in the span of a single day. The bridge hummed around her, all jury-rigged systems and improvised solutions, but it felt more like home than the Academy ever had. "Oscar, plot a course for the Regency," she said, pulling up the tactical display. "Time to crash Captain Hartwell's party." "Plotting intercept course," Oscar replied. "But first, you might want to hear this. I've been monitoring fleet communications, and our dear Captain Hartwell has been quite busy since leaving you for dead." The main screen flickered to life, showing a transmission from earlier that day. There was Hartwell, looking appropriately solemn as he spoke to what appeared to be a full assembly of fleet commanders. "It is with heavy hearts that we must report the loss of Cadet Riley Knox," Hartwell intoned, his voice heavy with manufactured grief. She volunteered for a dangerous solo reconnaissance mission aboard the derelict Nemesis, knowing full well the risks involved. Her sacrifice exemplifies the finest traditions of the Terran Space Service. Riley's jaw dropped. "Volunteered? Volunteered?" "It gets better," Oscar said dryly. "Keep watching." "Knox died as she lived," Hartwell continued, fearlessly serving her fellow officers and asking for nothing in return. "I have recommended her posthumously for the Star of Valor, our highest decoration for heroism in the face of impossible odds." The transmission cut out, leaving Riley staring at the blank screen in complete disbelief. That absolute, unmitigated, brass-plated son of A. "I believe the technical term is lying sack of recycled atmosphere," Oscar supplied helpfully. "He's already received preliminary approval for his commendation. Something about excellence in training operations under adverse conditions." Riley's hands clenched into fists. "Oh, he's going to get his adverse conditions all right. How long until we reach the fleet?" "At maximum burn, 6 hours. Though I should point out that pushing these improvised systems that hard might cause minor complications." "Define minor." "Minor. Catastrophic engine failure, life support collapse, or spontaneous hull breach. You know, the usual." Riley grinned, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Oscar, my friend, sometimes you have to risk everything to prove you're still alive. Take us to maximum burn. The nemesis leaped forward like a predator scenting blood. In the engine room, jury-rigged systems screamed in protest as they were pushed far beyond their design specifications. On the bridge, Riley monitored their progress with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for bomb disposal experts and chess grandmasters. You know, Oscar said conversationally as they hurtled through space, I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About teaching lessons to people who underestimate others. Yeah? What about it? I spent 4 months powered down, convinced I was worthless without a proper crew. Then you showed up and proved that sometimes one determined human with a bad attitude is worth more than an entire fleet of by-the-book officers. Riley felt a warm glow that had nothing to do with the overcharged engines. You're not so bad yourself for a sarcastic computer program. I prefer artificially intelligent life form with trust issues, but thank you. They dropped out of jump space right on schedule, emerging into normal space just outside the fleet's current position. Riley's sensors immediately picked up dozens of ships in formation, with the massive bulk of the Regency at the center like a queen bee surrounded by her workers. There they are, she said softly. Target acquired. I'm detecting increased communications traffic, Oscar reported. They've spotted us. And judging by the transmission patterns, Captain Hartwell is having what humans would call a very bad day. Riley activated the communications array and opened a channel to the entire fleet. Attention Terran fleet, this is the dreadnought Nemesis requesting permission to join the formation. We seem to have missed the funeral. The response was immediate and panicked. Hartwell's voice crackled across the channel, all his composure gone. That's impossible. Knox, you're supposed to be, how did you, what have you done? Oh, you know, Riley replied cheerfully. A little of this, a little of that. Mostly I've been having a fascinating conversation with your dead ship about the difference between actual heroism and complete incompetence. Care to guess which category you fall into. Sometimes the universe provides you with moments of perfect, crystalline satisfaction. This was one of those moments for Riley Knox as she watched an entire fleet scramble to figure out how a supposedly dead cadet had just appeared in a fully operational dreadnought. All ships, stand down, came Admiral Morrison's voice over the fleet channel. Nemesis, explain your status immediately. Riley leaned back in her captain's chair, enjoying every second. Admiral, this is Cadet, acting Captain Knox of the dreadnought Nemesis. Ship is fully operational, crew is highly motivated, and we're here to discuss some irregularities in Captain Hartwell's recent reports. This is impossible, Hartwell's voice cut in, high with panic. The ship was derelict. Knox, you were given a simple training exercise. Training exercise? Riley's voice carried across the fleet communications like honey mixed with acid. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting it looked a lot like you dumping me on a dead ship and flying away to collect medals for my heroic sacrifice. Oscar's voice joined the conversation, transmitted on all channels. For the record, I can confirm that no training materials were provided, no specific objectives were outlined, and the abandonment was conducted with what I calculate to be malicious intent. Who is that? Morrison demanded. Admiral, meet Oscar, the ship's AI, Riley replied. He's been very educational. Did you know that abandoning personnel on derelict ships violates 17 different fleet regulations? Oscar's been keeping track. The fleet had formed a loose circle around the Nemesis, but nobody seemed quite sure what to do. After all, technically Riley was still a cadet, and technically the Nemesis was still a Terran vessel. The situation had moved far beyond anyone's contingency plans. Knox, Hartwell said, trying to regain his composure, return to the fleet immediately. We can discuss this situation through proper channels. Oh, we're going to discuss it, Riley replied. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Oscar, would you be so kind as to play back Captain Hartwell's touching eulogy from this morning? The transmission played across all channels. Hartwell's manufactured grief and lies echoing through the fleet. When it finished, the silence was deafening. "Admiral," Riley said into that silence, "I'd like to file a formal complaint against Captain Hartwell for conduct unbecoming an officer, abandonment of personnel, compiling false reports, and having the personality of a particularly unpleasant fungus." "Knox, you will stand down immediately." Hartwell screamed. "I am ordering you to surrender your vessel." "Here's the thing, Captain," Riley replied, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "You made one critical error in your calculations. You assumed I'd die quietly and let you be the hero. But I'm not dead, I'm not quiet, and I'm definitely not letting you get away with this." The Nemesis suddenly accelerated, breaking from the fleet formation and heading straight for the Regency. Alarms blared across the fleet as Riley demonstrated exactly what a properly motivated dreadnought could do in the hands of someone with nothing left to lose. "She's locked onto us," Briggs shouted over the Regency's bridge communications. "All ships intercept," Hartwell ordered. "Stop her." "Men?" But Riley had spent her entire academy career studying tactics, and she'd learned from the best. More importantly, she'd learned what not to do from the worst. The Nemesis wove through the fleet like a dancer, using their own formations against them, making it impossible for anyone to get a clear shot without hitting their own ships. "Oscar," she said calmly as particle beams flashed around them, "target the Regency's engines. Disable only. I want them alive for the court-martial." "With pleasure," Oscar replied. "It's been too long since I've had a proper target." The Nemesis's forward cannon spoke once, a brilliant lance of energy that struck the Regency's engine section with surgical precision. The massive ship shuddered and began to drift, suddenly helpless. Riley opened a channel directly to the Regency. "Captain Hartwell, this is your former student. Class is now in session, and today's lesson is about the consequences of underestimating people." 3 hours later, Riley found herself in the unusual position of dictating terms to a fleet admiral. The Nemesis hung in space next to the disabled Regency, and Riley was fairly certain this was the first time in military history that a cadet had taken an entire fleet hostage and lived to tell about it. "Let me see if I understand your demands correctly," Admiral Morrison said over the communication channel, his voice carefully neutral. "You want a full investigation into Captain Hartwell's command practices, formal charges filed for abandonment and filing false reports, an official recognition of your AI companion's sentience and service record." "Those aren't demands, Admiral," Riley replied pleasantly. "Those are the terms for me not filing a complaint with the Inspector General about how the fleet's training protocols apparently include attempted murder." Oscar chimed in helpfully, "I've also prepared a complete report on Captain Hartwell's tactical assessments from the past year. The statistical analysis shows a pattern of incompetence that borders on mathematical impossibility." There was a long pause. Finally, Morrison spoke again. "Knox, you realize this entire situation is completely unprecedented. You've effectively stolen a dreadnought, held a fleet at gunpoint, and humiliated a senior officer in front of his entire command structure." "I prefer to think of it as aggressive problem-solving," Riley said. "Besides, technically I didn't steal anything. The Nemesis was abandoned, I salvaged it, and Oscar here chose to work with me voluntarily." "Right, Oscar?" "Absolutely," Oscar confirmed. "Best decision I've made in months. This human is statistically improbable but remarkably effective." Another pause, then what might have been a chuckle from Morrison. "Very well. Now, Knox, your terms are accepted. Captain Hartwell will be relieved of command and transferred to Supply Station 14 for administrative duties. You'll be promoted to lieutenant and given permanent command of the Nemesis. And your AI will be granted full recognition as a sentient being and commissioned as your first officer." Riley felt a grin spread across her face. "Thank you, Admiral. I think you'll find we're a very effective team." "I'm sure you are," Morrison replied dryly. "Try not to hold any more fleets hostage, Knox. It sets a bad precedent." As the fleet began to disperse, Riley leaned back in her captain's chair and looked out at the stars. The Nemesis hummed around her, all improvised systems and impossible solutions, but it felt like home. "So," Oscar said conversationally, "what do we do now? I assume your revenge is complete." Riley smiled. "Oscar, my friend, this wasn't revenge. This was just proving a point. The real fun starts now. We've got a ship that shouldn't exist, crewed by people the universe forgot about, and absolutely nothing to lose. I say we go find some impossible missions and show everyone what happens when you underestimate the underestimated." "You know," Oscar mused, "when I first came online, my programmers told me that humans were unpredictable, illogical, and prone to making decisions that defied statistical analysis. I thought that was a design flaw. And now? Now I think it might be your greatest strength. Humans are statistically impossible, but you make it work anyway. It's inspiring." Riley laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge of their impossible ship. "Welcome to humanity, Oscar. Population, everyone who's too stubborn to know when they're beaten." As the Nemesis set course for the Outer Rim, where the real adventures waited, Riley reflected on the day's events. She'd started as a disgraced cadet facing certain death, and ended as the captain of her own ship with a loyal AI companion and a completely clean service record. Not bad for someone who was supposed to be dead. The universe, Riley decided, should really be more careful about who it chooses to underestimate.